In this course, you will learn about Nmap. Nmap lets you investigate a network, so you know which computers are available or online in the network or on the internet. And it also lets you scan for open ports. And a port is like a connection to the outside world that you can connect to. So Nmap is a tool that should be in any hacker's toolbox. In this course, I'll use this Linux distribution, so the default Kali Linux distro. However, you can install Nmap on any Linux computer. If you're on Debian or Ubuntu, you might run the command install Nmap, and otherwise, whichever package manager you use. Now, you can also, it's again my Linux distribution that I'm using in this course. You can also just type Nmap and go to the website, and you can then download the security scanner on the download page. So if you're using another system, there's a Windows version of it, some more information about Linux version, a Mac version. So that's nmap.org if you want to manually download it and not install it using your package manager. So Nmap is the program we'll use in this program. It's a command line program, so a terminal program. For example, I can type nmap-h and it will show you all of the things it can do. It shows you the version number. It can discover which computers are on the network. It can do different types of scans. And by scanning, it checks which services are online in the computer. That might be a web server, it might be a mail server, or different kind of services that the computer offers to the outside world. You can specify which port it should scan. That's like the connection to the outside world. For example, the web might be going on port 80, and the file transfer might be happening on port 21. So all of the internet traffic happens on different ports. And it can scan which ports are open. You'll see it can run scripts. We'll get more into that later. It can detect which operating system is running, and it can do some other stuff. So, for example, let me give you a demo. I'll do nmap -o, which scans for operating system. You'll see OS detection -o. So, and then type your target's computer address. And it requires to run as administrator. And you'll see it will detect which computer system is running. So in this case, it's running a Linux system, and it tells some more information about it, and also which services are online. So this computer is opening different services to me, or anyone in the network, MySQL, which is a database system, a web server. And we'll get more into this in the course. But the main thing for this lecture is to install Nmap. So either using your package manager, type whatever you use, for example, apt or apt-get, install Nmap. If you don't use Linux, you can go to nmap.org and download it from nmap.org. So if you go to the download page, you can download whichever version you need, so a Windows version or a Linux version or a Mac version. Alternatively, you can go and download the Hacking Linux distribution from the internet. So on kali.org, you can go to download or installation. And download it from this website. I'm in the documents page. You can click download when you go to this website and install it, and then Nmap is available by default. But you don't necessarily have to install it. It's just a nice little tool that hackers use because it has a lot of hacking tools available. It's a specific Linux distribution for hacking. So you can click download on this website and Nmap is included. Or you can manually download Nmap from nmap.org. Or alternatively, just start your terminal and use your package manager to install Nmap. Your computer has a unique internet address. It can have more than one. And if you open up a terminal and type the command IP space A, you'll see that your network devices, I have two devices, ETH0, which is a regular network device, and a wireless device. And by these network devices, you connect through your network and the internet. And you'll see a flag called INET, which is short for internet address. So this is your local network address. Now, if you have a wired connection, you'll see the same, but you'll see INET somewhere here on this line. In my case, I have the wireless device connected, so we have the internet address here. And when it comes to hacking, knowledge is power. So you want to know as much information as possible about your potential target. And the target can be a single computer or a single device, but usually you want information about the entire network because you want to exploit it. So there can be vulnerabilities in, for example, a printer, in a Samba server or FTP server. There can be different ways into the network. And so you want to have a complete picture of the network. The more knowledge you have about the target system or network, the more options you have available. So how do you enumerate which computers are in the network? Well, you can do a scan with Nmap. And so in order to do that, you can start up a terminal. So we have already a terminal open here. And we can type the command nmap. Now, I'm using Kali Linux, so nmap is always installed. However, if it's not installed, you can use your package manager to install nmap. Then we type nmap space sn. That will do a ping sweep. So what it will do is to find all the networks or all the computers and devices on the same network. And the network we're interested in is the same network as we're connected. So we want this network, and you want to scan the entire subnet, so 255 possible computers. And using this command, you can scan which computers or devices are online. So it might take a second or so to load, but it will return which devices are online on the same computer network. And that's particularly useful because when you know the addresses, these are all possible ways to gain more access into the company, right? Except the last one. So we can scan these computers or devices for ports. Ports are ways that applications communicate with the outside world, or you can also view it like how the computer connects with the outside world. So it can be running a web server, which would be on port 80. It can be running an FTP server, which would be running on 21. It can be running an SSH server, a printer server, all kind of things could be running. And all these all these applications, they can have vulnerabilities. So that a vulnerability or weakness lets you into the system. That's why you want to scan the devices. So we can scan, for example, with nmap, and then scan the device. For example, we can scan this computer, and let's say you want to know if the web server port is open. So you can type -p80, and you'll see the web service is closed. Now you can scan multiple ports. So let's say you want to check if an FTP server is open, 21. You'll see FTP server is closed. And of course you can manually define all your ports. So you can see 403 is open, which is encrypted web server. And you can manually scan those. So this is on the one computer. You can also do that for the other computers we scanned. So we scanned the computers in the network using this command, and then we can check out this computer or this device, what ports are open to the outside world. So we check the 5 computer and see that, okay, on this computer or this device, the ports we specified are all closed. So that's some of the things you can do. You can also scan a range of ports. So let's say we don't know exactly how many ports are open or which, but you can say scan from port 1 to port 1000 and see if anything is open. So in this case, it shows you immediately everything is closed. If you have a large network, the scanning can take a while. The other computer was port 3. You'll see it takes a little longer to scan all the ports. But if a port is open, it will show up using this command. And when the port is open, that means you can connect to it and also potentially exploit it. So you see on this, I really closed down everything in my network. But they show up here. I have another device, probably everything's closed as well. But the ports show up here, and then you can connect to it and potentially exploit it. So let's do a ping swipe again. We want to know a complete picture of all the devices in the network. So we need the this command nmap-sn, and then your IP address and the subnet size. So if you run that, it will show you the potential targets on the same network. And then once you have that list of targets, you can scan a specific device or system, which ports are open for the outside world. Now, depending, it can take a little while to show up. So you'll see I have several devices here on the network. We have a device here, another device, and you can scan a specific device. If you want to scan a device for all open ports, you can use -p- and then the IP address. So let's say we want to scan 0.4, then it will scan every port for that device. And it will show you all of the ports of the open ports. So you'll see it has a SSH open, which lets you remotely control the computer. It has a web server open on port 80. There's a database running here, and there's some other ports and services open as well. Now this is really great because you can use these open ports to connect to the system and potentially get into these computers. For example, in the case of SSH, they always ask for username passwords to log in. So if I try to connect to it with SSH, you'll see it asks for a password. So we can try to brute force it. And that's the case with all of the services, or most of the services. Like, you want a complete list, and then you can try to brute force that once you know which ports are open. Other things you can do is running exploits. Nmap comes with a set of exploits. So you can run an exploit using the script command. And exploits can have different categories. So if you go to the Nmap directory, which is Nmap, you'll see there's a directory called scripts. So the Nmap directory is users share Nmap. And in the scripts directory, you'll find all of the exploit scripts available for Nmap. So it can abuse really a lot of weaknesses in systems. And this is just a list of weaknesses you can find. For example, there can be an anonymous login allowed into the system, which is definitely not what you want. But It could be that it has that vulnerability or weakness and lets you in without any credentials at all. Might be it's using Pro FTPD, a FTP server, which has a backdoor. You'll see that all of these files or all of these scripts have the .nse extension, and you can open these files with any editor. So whether you use Nano, Vim, or whatever you use to edit files. So let's say we open one of these scripts, and you'll see a lot of programming code inside here. So this is all Lua code, programming language called Lua. Doesn't really matter, but it's in this directory user share nmap scripts. You can find all of the scripts, exploit scripts, and to run nmap with it, you use the flag -- script. There are three basic scan types with Nmap. So when you're port scanning, you can do different things. When you use a computer and network, there are two main protocols that are always used, either the TCP protocol or the UDP protocol. Now, whenever you're using data that needs to be correct, you're using the TCP protocol. The UDP protocol is not connection oriented. So with the UDP protocol, the one computer is just continuously sending their data, like video, and it doesn't check if the data sent and received is actually correct. With the TCP protocol, the data sent and received is checked and correct. So you can do those types of scan. If you want to do a TCP scan, you can type ST. And if you want to do a UDP scan, you can type nmap -su. Now, most of the times you'll be using a TCP scan because most of the applications running on a computer or a server are always on TCP, like FTP, web services, SSH. They are all connection oriented. That's why it's using TCP. So most of the times you'll use the ST flag. Now you can also have open flags, which is like a little trick, but it's the same as the TCP scan. However, they are harder to detect. Now that's because, let me remove this. With connection oriented or TCP, it sends a message to the server, it sends a message back, and it returns again a message to the server. Now, when you have a SYN or half open scan, it sends a message to the server, and the server sends a message, and then it just stops. So that's why it's harder to detect. So the flags are ST, SS, and SU. Those are the possible scans you can do. Now, in addition, there also are some other scans you can do. You can do a TCP null scan, TCP fin scan, and a Christmas scan. There are some additional scans, but they are less common. The command nmap -st will do TCP connection oriented scan, which is the default in all the web and most of the applications is the TCP protocol. It's a connection oriented protocol. And this protocol has a handshake. It's three-way handshake. So it talks to the other computer, sends a SYN message like hi, sends hi back, and then the computer says hi, I have received it. So it does that using SYN and SYN-ACK messages, but that's the process. So that's how it knows a port is opened. It sends the hi message or the SYN message, it sends SYN-ACK back, and then it returns ACK. Now with a closed port, it also sends the SYN package, but then if it sends reset or attack back. So that's how the scanner knows that the port is closed. So that's the TCP handshake. It's always 3 messages sent back and forth, or 2 if a port is closed. TCP IP is one of the fundamentals of networks or networking, besides the UDP protocol. So the main way Nmap knows a port is closed is because it gets a reset message instead of a SYN-ACK message back. So it can be that a port is open but hidden behind a firewall. In that case, the Nmap doesn't know that. Now, if you want, you can read about the TCP protocol. But the main thing to know is that if a port is closed, it sends the reset package back. You can also do UDP scan. UDP is a connectionless protocol. So whenever two computers use UDP, they just send message through the line and they don't check if the data is correct or valid. If bits are lost, they just send it and keep sending it all the time. That means that a handshake like we had in TCP is not really necessary, right? It just starts sending data and it doesn't care if the data is received or not, so it doesn't do any handshake. So in order to do a UDP port scan, you type -s uppercase U with the IP address and maybe the port range that you want to scan. And in order to do a UDP scan, you need to have root privileges. So you can do that by typing sudo, and then it will start doing the scan. So just like a TCP scan, now it will check for UDP ports that are open. And you can specify certain ports if you want to. Might take a while. So if a UDP port doesn't respond, it will return open filtered. Yeah, basically the SU flag checks for UDP ports that are opened. Now, of course, just like TCP, this might take a while. But it's the main difference is that TCP is what you'll use most of the time because people don't want their data to be lost. However, for hacking, it might be that some video thing is open, some video service or other kind of service which doesn't really require the data to be valid all the time. So then the UDP protocol or a UDP port could be open as well. So that's how you would check it with the -SU flag. Now, when you run Nmap, you have the ST flag for scanning over the TCP protocol. However, this might be too obvious for the firewall. So there are 3 different types of scans you can use, which is a null scan, a fin scan, and a Christmas scan. All of these are TCP port scan, but they're less common and stealthier. So the firewall may not detect that kind of scan. Which is great in case you don't want to be detected. So to run null scan, you type -SN with capital N. That sends a TCP request with no flags at all. You can run a fin scan with SF. This is almost identical, but instead it sends an empty packet. And finally, you have the Christmas scan, in which you can just use another flag, SX, as you might have expected. So that runs the Christmas scan and it sends some malformed TCP packets. And then based on the response, it knows if a port is open or closed. So all of these flags are similar to the ST flag. Functionally, they do the same. However, they are harder to detect for a firewall. So if you don't want to be detected when scanning, you can use any of those flags. They might be a bit slower than just a regular scan, but the advantage is that they are harder to attack, harder to detect, so you can evade the firewall. Now Nmap has the scripting engine, the Nmap scripting engine, or NSE for short, and any script or scripts category we can run and check on a system. For example, we can run Nmap and select the category vulnerabilities, So it checks the system for vulnerabilities, and then the IP address you want to scan. So let's do this IP address and run it. So now it will run all the scripts of the category vulnerability, and it does so on the target system. Now there can be quite a lot of scripts, so it can take a while. You can also check for a specific script, so let me break this. And for example, let's say we want to scan for let's say we want to check this script, FTP for anonymous login. So we can say FTP anon with the target IP address, and it will check that vulnerability on that device. You can use -VV for verbose output if you want. So if you do that, you'll see the NSA scripting engine starts. So that's -VV. That will give you verbose output, which is always a good idea. It shows more information. And we run a specific script which checks if there's a vulnerability in FTP in order to log in. And you should see in the logs that if that is open or closed. And let me see, there is one script running for scanning. Start the script. Completed the script. And it said connection refused. So that's not allowed. But you can use a specific script with the script flag. And you'll see there's lots of scripts here. You can just select one, or you can choose by category. For example, the vulnerabilities category, and then run it. And then it will check the system for vulnerabilities on the system. So it scans the system for vulnerabilities. Now you can also use the exploit flag to exploit a vulnerability, or you can do a save. You can run only the save scripts to gain more information about the system. So you can run all kind of different scripts, but the key takeaway is that you can use the --script parameter to run scripts with Nmap, whether that is an exploit or a vulnerability scan or just gathering information or brute force, but that's the main idea of the script flag. So let's scan the target for vulnerabilities. We type nmap, --script is vulner, so that runs all the vulnerability scripts that are available. We type the target IP address, and we want verbose output to show all of the possible information. So this will run all of the scripts of the category vulnerabilities and scan for vulnerabilities or scan for weaknesses on the target system. And once we know weaknesses, we can of course exploit them. So if we start to run this, it will automatically use the Nmap scripting engine and run all of the scripts. And it will tell you if it found any weaknesses in the target system. So once you know about weaknesses, you can exploit them. Now it might take a while because of course it has to run all of these scripts. But once it's completed and found vulnerabilities, then it shows you that those vulnerabilities in the terminal. So the main thing to remember is --script will run a script, and if you just want to run a category, you can type, for example, vulnerabilities for running vulnerabilities. Some scripts might actually need root privileges, so you can run it as root if you want. And it's almost done, and once it's done, it will show you which or if any vulnerabilities exist that Nmap has found. So that's the --script flag that you need to keep in mind, and it's done. And you'll see, yes, it did found vulnerabilities. For example, it found a vulnerability in Apache. And then this vulnerability allows to do denial of service attack. And it found some other vulnerabilities, for example, the MySQL database. It can do SYN-ACK attacks and also for some other protocols. So there are vulnerabilities in this system that you can exploit. Now Nmap also comes with, there's some more. There's HTTP, which also has these vulnerable weaknesses that you can exploit. Now, if WordPress is found, it might also be able to exploit that, depending on which WordPress version is installed. So yeah, that's you can scan for vulnerabilities on a target system in that way. If you do a port scan, it shows you the available ports for targeting. For example, we can do port scan for, let's say, all of the ports like this. So all of the open TCP ports on the target computer, and it can scan that. Nmap is also able to brute force. Now SSH is a protocol you can use to connect into a computer, and it gives you full control over the computer. So that's always very interesting, the SSH protocol. And Nmap comes with different brute force scripts. So if I search for brute force scripts like this, in the directory user share nmap scripts, you'll find that for a lot of protocols, Nmap can try to brute force. And you'll see it can do that for FTP, it can do that for HTTP, MySQL, Oracle, and also you'll see SSH there. So Nmap can also try to brute force SSH ports, and by brute force it means it tries different usernames and passwords to get access. So you can do that by running the script. So this is the script name, SSH brute. So you type nmap -- script is SSH brute, your target, and you want verbose output. And if you run that command, so the highlighted command, it will run the script and try to brute force the target system. So if I run it, you'll see it will try different username and passwords in order to try to gain brute force access into the system. And it will try with different common usernames and passwords to try and find different ways into the system. Now it might be these usernames and passwords exist, but it can also be, of course, that the usernames and passwords don't exist. So it's a bit of a lucky shot, but that's the idea of brute force, that trying every username password. And you can do brute forcing for different protocols, as I've showed you, using the commands I've shown you before. So using this command, and pick any of the brute force scripts you like for the open ports. So for the ports that are shown, you can pick any, like SSH or MySQL, and then try to run any of the brute force scripts to see if you gain access to the system. And this is the command to run a specific brute force script, in this case SSH, with your target IP, and you want verbose output in order to get some more data.